patients want to understand how to be a good patient. It's up to us to teach them. It's up to us to teach them very specifically, like when you walk in the door, don't show up early, don't show up late, show up right on time. We may have a small parking lot or what have you, but this is where you go. And you can instruct a patient if you want them to remove the face paper from the previous person, you can teach them to do that. You can teach them to lie face down. You can teach them to have a seat right in your cervical chair. You can teach them to do whatever you need to do. But once you do that, then you need to hold them accountable to that. And I think
Yes.
that's huge.
Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We are here to lead you on the way. All right, welcome back to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. I'm Dr. Lona Cook, and I am here with the one, the only Dr. Kevin Day, and we were just geeking out right before this, talking about how great it is to be in our field right now in this time and space. There's a lot of opportunity. So, Kevin, excited to have you and keep this great conversation going. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So today we're going to jump into talking about a day 3 process. And you might be listening to this thinking, what is a day 3? I know what day 1 is, the new patient, obviously. And day 2 is the report of findings. But what is a day 3? So Kevin, what is a day 3?
A day 3 saves your sanity. How about that?
Yeah, right.
Day 3 is essentially the expectations and agreements, right? And before I hopped on this call, I was trying to think like, okay, what are the 3 things that a person can take away, or more so like, what are the 3 areas of benefits for a day 3? And we can put that into 3 categories. The first being the patient benefits actually from having a day 3. We can unpack that in a moment. We can unpack the fact that your practice / the doctor benefits from having a day 3. And then finally, believe it or not, your community, like the people that you take care of and the people around your practice that are either in your practice or not, believe it or not, benefit from you having a day 3. So that's what I brought. So does that sound good to you?
That sounds great. And when you say these words, expectations and agreements, right? Like it really is expectations and agreements. You're teaching people what to expect and what they're agreeing to, because most of us are either trying to lump that into day 2, or we're not really doing it at all. And people have a lot of questions, and maybe they're not following the rules because you've never laid them out for them, right? And
Right.
so I kind of thought of it as this analogy for anyone that goes to yoga, right? If you are a CrossFitter and you're used to how you behave at the CrossFit gym, and you come into a yoga studio thinking the same type of expectations is going to happen when you enter the yoga studio, you probably are going to be like nails on a chalkboard to the yoga experience, because those are 2 very different expectations and agreements of how you behave in those places that are designed to help bring you health, of course, but the way you behave there is different. So, think of it kind of like that. We're just laying out the groundwork, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, the question becomes like, why? Why do you lay out that groundwork? And it's ultimately to have a better outcome yet again for the patient, for your team, yourself as well, and then for your community. And, so before we get tactical, I think it's important to explain like why. And, does an office absolutely need to have a day 3? No. If you're just wanting to take care of a handful of folks and like only for a short period of time and just provide some palliative care, you don't need day 3. You really do not. But if you're trying to provide, a structure from or for, again, your practice as well as your patients and your community, you're going to need to set some guardrails essentially, or some expectations and agreements for your patients. And when they first get started in practice with you, they're very malleable. And it's the analogy of like, the potter and the clay. Like in the very beginning, it's very malleable. You can do so much with it. You can turn it into a vase, you can turn it into a bowl, you can turn it into whatever you like. But as that analogy goes, the longer that thing spins, the more hardened it becomes. And then eventually the only way that you're ever going to be able to make a change is if you break it, right?
Yep.
And patients, when they first get started in your practice, they want to be a good patient. It's up to us to screw it up, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so to continue with the thought that like if you want to be able to do more, serve more, love more, give more, you want to be able to structure this in a way that patients understand their role in that, right? And so
Yep.
we say that 0 to 150, if you want to talk about like patient volume and where this really begins to gain some traction, 0 to 150 is basically doctor training. Whereas once you get in that 150 range to 250, maybe 300, it's staff training, like teaching your staff how to communicate with your patients. But when you get to 300 and beyond, it's all patient training. And I'm not
Mhm.
suggesting that you wait until you get to 300 patient visits a week before you start training your patients, right? You want to go
Right.
ahead and start this process now. But, patients want to understand how to be a good patient. It's up to us to teach them. It's up to us to teach them very specifically, like when you walk in the door, don't show up early, don't show up late, show up right on time. We may have a small parking lot or what have you, but this is where you go. And you can instruct a patient if you want them to remove the face paper from the previous person, you can teach them to do that. You can teach them to lie face down. You can teach them to have a seat right in your cervical chair. You can teach them to do whatever you need to do. But once you do that, then you need to hold them accountable to that. And I think
Yes.
that's huge.
Yes. So true. And in my experience, that was a hard thing for us because we had not taught enough of behavior in the adjustatorium. And so then course correcting people who had gotten in bad behaviors is a lot more headache than if we would have just started right from the get-go of here's the face paper, here's where we want you to be,
Right.
get you in those
Right.
positions.
You
Yep.
you end up needing to break that
Yes. Yes.
that clay or whatever it is, I guess when it hardens. I don't know what you'd call it at that point, but
Hmm.
yeah, you have to
Yeah.
break the agreement. And so, then we also start to talk about like what do you mean by the benefits of the practice in a doc having, systems and procedures for or not systems and procedures, but expectations and agreements for a day three. Well, if you have a person that thinks that they can come in and every adjustment, every appointment that you're in there with them is also a consultation time frame, that's heavy.
Mhm.
And yet again, when we first get started into practice, we want to show that patient how much we know, right? And we will turn every appointment into a 15 to 20-minute consult and teach them exactly how that fifth lumbar that's subluxated is aggravating that sciatic nerve and exactly why and when it's going to heal, and we just want to show off our knowledge. Have you done
You're
that?
giving me heart palpitations right now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because we've been there, we've all done it. And, even though we have that knowledge, it's not the right place to disclose that. And, in the beginning, when you first get started, you can get away with that. You can because you only have 4 or 5 appointments, right? But as you begin to grow and you start to gain more traction, and now those people that are used to having 15 to 20 minutes of your time and you only have 3 to 5 for them, guess what? They get angry and they leave, right? So it's about
As well
setting,
as you're just not going to grow, right? Your
you
cup is
won't.
already full. Yeah.
Right, right.
Mhm.
It's either gonna, create a negative review because, oh, the doc is so busy and they're just trying to, get people in and out as quickly. We used to be able to do X. No, set the expectations early
Yep.
on in your career as well as early on in the patient's journey. But it's so much easier for your staff as well because, if that patient is, scheduled for 5 minutes, but they're taking 15, then your
Mhm.
staff is stressed because they're explaining to everyone in the
Right.
lobby why you're behind schedule, and it really becomes heavy.
Mhm.
And that's just scratching the surface on some of the detrimental effects of not having good expectations and agreements for your staff, and
Mhm.
ultimately the benefits of them. When you walk through the details of your expectations and agreement, at the end of the day, it's going to improve your revenue as well because they're more consistent with care.
Yep. Definitely. So, Kevin, take us through here. Like, we've kind of hit like you're showing them how to move through the office. And up front, they're also letting them know some of the things that create great patients. Like, if you need to reschedule, what do you do? If there's a payment issue, what do you do? If you miss appointments, what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can customize this to fit your practice exactly the way that you want. But again, the goal is that you're teaching them to do exactly what you want. So we teach by repetition. So a lot of what I cover when I see that patient for that second adjustment is recovered by my staff knee to knee with a document that they initial on each line and that they sign and that they get a copy of. And
Yes.
when that patient first sits down, tell them exactly what you want them to do. So, and explain, I think the most important thing is what I'm going to discuss right now, which is like as soon as that patient has a seat, again, I'm against the guy, so as soon as their butt makes contact with the chair, not before. Hey, how'd you come along after that first adjustment? Great, glad
Yeah.
to hear that. So on today's appointment, I like to explain how our office is set up. Perhaps you've noticed this doesn't function like a traditional office. So what we've done is put everything into a few different categories to simplify this for you. What we're doing now is the first category. These are called the adjustment hours. And this is time set up for me to do this examination, which is what we use to determine, do you need an adjustment today? And if yes, precisely where? And then we deliver the adjustment. And it takes 3 to 4 minutes. And we're also going to be educating you on something about your health. See that poster right in front of you? If for some odd reason I forget, make sure that you remind me of that. That's the dirty dozen, right? But that's it. It takes 3 to 4 minutes. But Lona, it doesn't leave enough time if you happen to have a question about your shoulder or a deviated septum or your toe or your nutrition or what have you. So what we came up with are consult times, and they're free, but all you have to do, and free if you want them to be, but all you have to do is let the staff know in advance that you would like to schedule some additional time with the doc. And you can do that in flow if you want, but preferred at a separate time at a separate date. That way we actually have time to answer that question in the manner that you deserve, not, hey, there's 3 families waiting, here's a rushed response. Does that make sense? Yes.
Mhm.
Great. Finally, our workshops, these are occurring 2 to 3 times a month. That is an excellent platform for you to bring your questions in. And I know that your staff is, or your spouse is going to have questions as well. Make sure that you bring them to that workshop as well. Does that make sense? Yes. Great. And then, we give them some recommendations on like, hey, take a walk, turn right out of our office, walk up to Rex's and back. And, that's a good walk right after the adjustment. So then we take that and then we take the patient right up front and they essentially walk through like, again, don't show up early, don't show up late. Try your very hardest not to miss or cancel an appointment. If you have to, make sure it's within 24 hours. And then down at the very bottom, it's, it's our goal to make a difference in the health of our community. So we welcome your referrals. Here are 2 family experience cards. Give them the opportunity to refer right away when they're really
Yes.
excited, and it helps to grow your practice.
Yes, that's amazing to have that in day 3 too. There's 2 things I want to underline that you said there. Number one is you're pre-framing everywhere, right? The more you pre-frame, you tell people what's about to happen, and then you show them it, right? Now there's no surprises. And 99% of what we're going to do with people, they're going to be totally fine with if we just pre-frame what this looks like. Then they
Right,
enjoy the process versus being like alarmed by it or like, oh, you pulled something out of left field that I didn't expect, right?
right.
And then the repetition part that you said, like I say it and then my staff says it and then they maybe even say it again, right? And then
Yes.
I give them a copy of it, right? Like you might think that's overkill, but I'm telling you, it's Kevin, do people hear everything that you say?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I was just having this conversation with one of our newer doctors and she's like, well, I feel like I said that already. I was like, it's all right. It's okay to say it over and over and over again because they're going to get it if you're reminding of it, over and over and
Repetition
over
is
again.
mastery.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's
And
so good. Thinking about, maybe you're not doing a day 3 yet, but what are some of the things that you could better orientate people to and that you could offer some repetition around so that you make sure you're creating great patients?
yeah, and I think before I answer that, I think there's one other like keystone to making this entire thing work is once you explain your day 3, your expectations and agreements for that patient to be a good patient in your practice, make sure you hold yourself accountable to that.
So good.
Because the last thing that you want to do is walk them through and tell them how to be a good patient. And then if they turn around and say, you know what, I got a question about this, and you completely negate everything that you just spoke to them about,
Mhm.
your credibility has gone down
Mhm.
your position of authority in that doctor-patient relationship has gone down, and they've just learned that even though you set expectations and agreements, you don't abide by them,
Mm, that's so
right?
good.
And I think that's absolutely huge to make sure you hold yourself accountable to the expectations and agreement that you are giving to them, right?
Mhm.
If not, you've done the patient a disservice. And that's where, it's a ripple effect. It really does impact your day, the patient's outcomes, your
Yeah.
practice, and the stress that you're putting on it, and ultimately your community. And by that, I mean everyone else that's not getting seen because you're answering questions when you should be taking care and serving your patients. And
Mhm.
just some pretty straightforward things for people to implement. Like if you don't have a day three, we call it a guide to max results, right? Just sit down and think, like walk through that patient journey. Like what is an ideal scenario for my full schedule to look like? What does it
Yep.
look like? And, what are the worst bad habits that your existing patients have? So, a lot of times it's right along the lines of, patients either showing up too early or too late. And there's some psychology behind that. It's like, well, why wouldn't you want them to show up early? Well, if their appointment time is at 9:45 and they walk in at 9:15 and they think you're just available whenever, well, that also means that you can come in at 10:15, right? And it's just kind of whenever I can make it in. You want to make sure that you're holding that patient accountable to showing up at that time. So the very first is make sure that you set very clear, rigid guidelines around their appointment time. Make a point to discuss like if they absolutely have to miss or cancel an appointment, that they reschedule it for the same day or that next day. It's not missing an appointment, it's getting that rescheduled for later on. And that's good communication to train with your staff, right? So if they are scheduled for Tuesday morning and they have a sick kid or, car trouble, okay, that's fine. We completely understand. We don't say that's okay. We understand. Get them in that afternoon. That way they keep that rhythm of the adjustment. So just explain that to them. Teach them like,
Mhm.
okay, we're here to make a change, and we're going to do our best work, over time in a rhythm. So explain that to them. And then I think the third thing is, yet again, is, we have a we have a business because we have a mission, not the other way around. So
Mhm.
let them know that you're trying to make a difference in your community and you welcome referrals and give them referral cards. And
Yes.
yes, there are so many other things that you can build into a day three, but let them know that you're on a mission and that you accept their referrals. And I think those three things alone can can change the
Yep.
course of a practice very quickly.
That's great. There's so many nuggets in this episode.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, probably a great exercise also to do with your team would be to just think about like what are some of the most awesome patients in your practice and why are they so awesome, right? Likely they're showing up when they're supposed to show up. They know how to like get to the table and do what they need to do. They already have things set up and scheduled out at the front desk. Like they're just a light lift, right? And then we can all think of some people in our practice, and we maybe still love them, but they're not a light lift. And then we've created probably through bad behavior and allowing certain behaviors, like where if you had another 100 of them, the practice would break apart, right? So that is a great exercise to just kind of go through with their team, like the difference between those two people. And how do we, by using repetition and verbally as well as written format, show that new patient now how to be more like all the great patients in your practice. That's really what the day three is about, right?
Yes. Day three. Day three, actually.
Yeah, day three.
Yes.
Yes. So Kevin, any parting thoughts just in rounding out this conversation about day three?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the very first few times you do it, let's just be honest, you're going to suck at it. But just get started. Train
Yes.
with your staff, of course, like take some practice runs with your staff, but ask them too, like, what would you like to see our patients do that creates the greatest tension and the
Mhm.
greatest stress for you that's consistent, that if you could change that, what would it be? So
Yeah.
leverage your staff's input when you're developing a day three, train on it with your staff, and then just get started and know that where you are right now and where you are going to be in 6 months when you've been doing it for a while is going to be completely different. But it's okay to start at point A, knowing that eventually you're going to be at point B. So train on it, get started, and I'm telling you, you're gonna be able to serve your patients, your community, and your practice so much better.
Yep. Totally agree. Well, thank you for all the nuggets today, Dr. Kevin. And I know I'll be seeing you in Orlando soon.
Very soon. Yep.
All right. And what's your Instagram if anyone wants to follow you and get connected?
I believe it's Dr. Kevin at, I don't know. Dr. Kevin at the Remark. I don't
Okay.
know.
We might have to find that and drop that in the show notes. So you could just send
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
love that.
We'll
He
figure
clearly
that out later.
Instagrams a lot. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lona.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Hey everyone, please listen in for this next bonus interview of one of our remarkable success partners. They all help us help more people find the benefits of chiropractic. So listen on.
Hi everyone, we have the very special guest today, Dr. David Fletcher from CLA, an amazing man, a good friend of TRP, a good friend of mine. So David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, it's going to be in the most interesting 10 minutes of anybody's life here because they get to listen to what we usually talk about. But anyhow, it's wonderful to be invited and to be a part of the TRP family. We relish every moment at CLA that we get a chance to, interact more closely with TRP clients. And I think the real reason is that when we take a look at the values that drive both of our companies, there's really no separation at all. We finish each other's sentences, so it's a wonderful experience.
That is for sure. Yeah, you've been personally. I've used CLA your services since 2000, so 25 years. I've been a CLA client, integral part of my practice. So. A lot of the listeners, most people would be aware of CLA, but what I really want to know, and I know what our listeners want to know, is what are the problems you actually solve for a practice?
Well, I think one of the most important things that we focus on and really use as a solution for everyone. It's not even a style of practice; it's for everyone. Is what we could determine or call the critical shift. Is that there's this moment in a chiropractor's experience and a patient's experience of where you have to take it beyond what their expectations are in the delivery of your care. We know that the vast majority of people entering into a chiropractic office aren't coming in and saying, arouse my innate. What they are saying, what they are saying is, I have a problem, and so we need to convert those people to hear our story. And one of the things that matters, and what chiropractic has always been about, is looking deeper into the nervous system. Right from the very start of the origins of our profession, we talked about the tone of the nervous system. And so scanning really opened that door. It didn't dismiss X-ray, it didn't dismiss orthoneuro tests or anything like that. It just said, what if we could look into the functioning nervous system? What if we could track that, and then we could solve the problem of developing responsible care plans, communicating to our patients the positivity of what it is? And really, it comes down to attraction, retention, and conversion, which is why I said we are TRPites when it comes to that.
So let's get specific here. And I know that CLA helps in all areas of practice through attraction, conversion, retention. So how specifically does it solve people's problems if they're having attraction problems? How does CLA solve that particular problem?
I think it usually begins with somebody, a parent or an adult, coming in to have the first visit, and it's going to be pain-based. It's going to be, I have a problem, because we haven't oriented them otherwise. And they start to realize that you as an examiner, you as a team, have the ability to really listen to them, but take the whole examination and reporting process deeper than what they thought. And so you set the stage for them to hear the story that you want them to hear, which is about, when it all comes down to it, the problem we really all face is conversion to a lifetime wellness patient. Let's just say that. We know that that's a dream, but we also know that it's a reality. I could look at your practice and I would see that the retention that leads to that, not everybody stays for a lifetime. You and I did. We became chiropractors. But the reality is that it opens doors, and it's an invitational model. So that's the number one thing. It brings highly visual. Well, you taught me this, is that it makes the invisible visible. Yeah. It allows the patient to have a clear understanding of what you are directing your attention to, and it vividly displays it in color and in scores and in trackable metrics.
Yeah. It's one of the benefits, and we know that 70% of the population are primary visual. So that when they can actually see on on a screen, on an iPad, or whichever way you deliver the
Mhm.
reports, which the amazing inroads that CLA has had over the last, I don't know how many years it is, going from very wired machine to these wireless machines and now to the iPads, and the reporting is just amazing. So when they can
Okay.
see it, when they can see how the nervous system is functioning, how does that, I mean, I know that it improves retention, hands down.
Yeah.
The conversion process. So how does it specifically solve the problems of conversion retention?
Well, conversion and retention is really easy because now you're not using plan, canned ham care planning. You're using the exact data that is presented to you in terms of a three-dimensional neurofunctional exam. We're looking at heart rate variability to get a global picture of what their stress and adaptability are. We're looking at their postural energy expenditure using EMG, and we're looking how deep it's going with their thermography. We build a complete model, or a report card, really is how we describe it, a report card called the core score that allows the patient and the doctor to have a trackable and identifiable goal. And I
Yes.
mean, who doesn't want a goal? And so we allow the patients to get on this journey of saying, well, first we have to release the tension, then we start to build new strategies. And instead of it taking a day or two or a week or so to feel better, we have a plan that we can put in place with it that originates with their initial problem, but can take them several months down the way, and as we know, several years down the way.
Yeah.
That's the retention conversion. You did ask about attraction, and I didn't really finish that because I got off on the usual.
On a tangent.
But but almost immediately, this is one of the most interesting things we see, and I know you can comment to this, is that we see the immediacy of family members coming in. Almost immediately, when a parent is scanned or a grandparent is scanned, they are so enthusiastic about wondering what a well child checkup looks like. Remember, we're not into the pathology business, we're into the possibility business. And so when a parent sees that they'd like to have a child scan, I mean, how else are you going to examine a child's nervous system unless you're scanning them? And
Yeah.
so they want a baseline. They want to know that before their child gets sick or before performance becomes an issue, that they have a baseline in place with you.
Yeah. And it's that baseline. I know personally in my practice, and as I said, been using for 25 years. What I realized is that the people that I thought were getting better, as in their symptoms were
I
getting better,
know.
when I scanned them, I realized, yes, their symptoms are better, but their nervous system is improving, but it's got a long way to go.
It
And
does.
that's the retention thing you're talking about. So I found that my retention jumped massively when I started using CLA all those years ago, and it is an integral part of my practice.
And it takes a lot of stress off of the clinician, off the chiropractor, because first off, you're building the conversations not on what is good for what they might perceive as the practice, but is really good for them. And one of the things that we know is that they need chiropractic care at a certain level. We know that, and we can track that. But there comes a time when they now can move away from needing it, like intentionally needing it, to where they can choose to be inviting themselves into it.
Correct.
And when we take a look at these emerged practices like yours, and I mean, we have thousands of offices around the world, so we know exactly what we're doing here. We see practices that were the average practice of the people we're talking to is what we would refer to as a 20-80 split. 20% pardon me, an 80-20 split. 80% of the early starts and the practice volume in a symptom-based practice is indeed short-term symptom-based. But we see the flip happening, that only 20% of people in a practice, of a mature practice that has built scanning and built the idea of retention into it, actually are just learning to become part of the 80%. In other words, that there's this natural progression from needs being met to being invited into this long-term better strategy called vitalism.
Yeah. And this is, yes, we talk conversion, and a lot of time, effort, energy is put into that conversion process, the initial one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
So
of course.
your day one, your day two process there. Then when you're looking at re-exams and doing this, and you mentioned goals before. I remember one of our patients, their practice, their actual goal was to improve their core score. And
Yeah, yeah,
that was their goal.
absolutely.
They said it. They said, I want my heart rate variability to be this number. That was their goal.
Yep. And
So
it is.
so as far as re-examinations and that continuing process over time, how does it really assist people to give them a pathway beyond that?
Well, we instituted something that I glamorously refer to as a rule of 12. And basically, it says that when we're building care plans, it's our responsibility to report back to the patient at least every 12 visits.
Mm-hmm.
And so every 12 visits, we set in a cycle where an examination must go. And let's just say that the patient's down to every couple of weeks or whatever. We never go beyond a 3-month window. In other words, that's the standard that we believe, looking at the neurofunctional changes that, both positive and negative that occur. We want the clinicians, we want the team to be constantly reviewing the why behind the patient's attendance in your practice. And that doesn't mean that there's this fear-based model. It's an inspiring model to say, just what you said, look, I've really come a long way, but I can see there's way more that I could achieve. Yes. And that's very powerful.
Yeah, and then the ones you have who may be on maintenance care, whatever that is, then they see their next scan and they see that it's actually it's not maintaining, it's actually deteriorating, and then it's very motivating for them to get back under corrective care or more wellness care. So I know it's such a good tool. I know I think all the coaches in TRP use it. So if it works, if it works for us, it works for anyone, right? So
it does. And it's so interesting because you can take away a lot of that anxiety as being, we all had it when we were early on in practice and otherwise, and we didn't know exactly how we were going to communicate the needs of a patient and what we could provide. And this just gives you a starting point, but a continuation. You don't have to make it up. Meaning, and I'm not suggesting we do like that, that'd be fallacious, but the reality is that you've got the tools right now to say, I understand now why you keep getting, an immune response that isn't working the way it should. I understand now why, your body doesn't heal completely after you've had an episode. It's because there's this chronic nerve tension. We have a plan. We know how to release it. We know how to rebuild it. We know how to get you revitalized. So stick with us. We've got a plan. And they hear that. They know it.
They know it. Yes. So, one of the big upgrades that you've made, as well as going to iPad versions with bridges and so forth, is you are a brilliant communicator. Everyone knows this, but you have so the ability to communicate the scans is what's really needed, isn't it? So that's all part of the package, if you like. Is how do you explain these?
Well, it was so exciting because it was so funny because in the early days, I started in 97, so I know exactly where we were going with it. You'd get this colorful piece of paper and you'd hand it to the patient and kind of go, you've got, some issues I got to deal with here. And there was this, they talk about this concept called MIGO, my eyes glaze over. And the patient go, I get you really are excited about this, but what does it really mean?
What does it mean?
And so, I mean, best intentions, right? But when we rebuilt the new software, which is called Synapse, and we said, we in our dream bucket, we said, let's build it to however it was. I was able to build a continuation plan through the core score communication. And so it actually is designed, it has a huge library behind it that looks at all the different iterations of the scores. And it literally cherry picks out a conversation based upon the data that you are observing on the scan. So basically, it allows me to be communicating the results to your patients. And it's really fun to do that. So it builds an individualized report that compares the data from previous exams and then builds a very understandable communication. And then after that, we said, well, nobody understands you anyways, David. So why don't we let educators do the real thing? And so they took that and built it into a very, very condensed but educated model. It's really quite something.
It is. It's very simple. And there's just an enormous amount of resources available to people so that they can communicate the scans, because that's part of the Hawthorne effect. You do need to communicate in a way that they understand, which it's really good at that. Okay. So, I mean, I know we can talk for hours, but how do people, what's their next step? They're thinking of scanning. They know this is a missing piece. They want to build more retention or attraction or conversion or whatever they want to do. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, certainly we're a wide open book, but one of the things that they have in this resource is they have you, meaning they have TRP and they have their coaches. So have a conversation initially with your coach, and they're going to direct you towards us anyways. But to bypass the coaches, I'm joking when I say that, but to get directly to us, it's so easy. It's called insightcla.com. And I want to share with anybody who's in here that there's an automatic TRP discount when you start to get involved with TRP and CLA. We're very generous because we love you guys. And so we have there aren't very many, but we have a preferred alliance relationship. And so anybody who comes and decides that it's time for them to either upgrade or to purchase new, they can be assured that they're going to be getting by far the very best deal that is available on the planet. Which I'm very proud to say. We also offer 0% financing for a 12-month window of time, which I think is exceedingly generous.
It is.
But we love that. And any way that we can get more people scanning and more people engaged in the community of TRP and CLA, we're 100% behind that.
Absolutely. So I know that you are the TRP clients who are in North America or come to the North American immersions. You'll find David there. You can see it there as well. But get in contact with CLA and just do yourself a favor. Basically, this is an integral part of many TRP practices. You're probably in the minority if you're not. So get into it, I reckon. So please, so good to see you on Zoom here. Can't wait to see you in person again very soon. So any
I think we're probably the only partner of the North American crew that actually does the connection with the Australian crew. And there's a real reason for that, is that we have such a passion play with New Zealanders and Australians. We've always had such a relationship down there. For the last 2 years, the weirdest thing is that my calendar has been conflicted on the TRP Australia dates. We're both busy, but mine just hasn't meshed. But I promise, and I mean this on the greatest time, I promise to come and participate down in Australia.
Nice.
So I can't wait.
I can't wait. Well, we'll see you soon. And as I said, get in contact with CLA and get scanning.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.